Take us through what was your path to becoming a diver?
So originally I was a gymnast, pretty much like any other diver, I would say. I was a level 8 gymnast training 9, and I broke 3 bones within 6 months. So I my body was telling me, like I need to quit or do something else that's less like a lot a lot of compacts, like a lot of injuries happening with this. So I chose diving, which is ironic because one of the bones I did break was in diving while I was a gymnast. So it's kind of ironic.
Which bone was that?
I broke my wrist. I broke my growth plate. I was on a trampoline and I like somehow double bounced myself. And that club I was at had these like platform trampolines. And so I kind of flew off. And if I flew off like a different direction, I would have like hit concrete. And so I don't know, I did something weird to stay on the trampoline, but I put my hands back and I went through the trampoline into one of the springs and I broke my wrist. Yeah, it was my very first practice. So it's so weird. Like I knew how to do a backflip on a trampoline, but it was just one of those like freak show kind of things.
Yeah, like almost just an instant reaction, that
Yeah. And like that's the first thing you're taught is to not put your arms down, but you're flying through the air and you're like, it's either concrete or something else. I don't know.
wow. So, facing those injuries, then the adversity. And I know when you got to Houston, you redshirted your first year. What did you learn about yourself through all of this?
Joining the sport solely, I was around 14. So I didn't really take diving seriously until recruiting time, actually. So during that COVID, I really was like, okay, I think I do want to I really want to do something D1. Diving is, my path right now. And I never really saw an opportunity because I never had a good DD list. Like to me, I would watch all these collegiate divers D1 and I'd be like, oh, I don't have that dive or something. And so COVID year really pushed me out of my comfort zone to get those dives that I needed to get recruited at that level.
Mhm.
So when I got interested by Bob, I was like, okay, like I have like, okay, this is something I can actually do. But I finally got those dives before my summer of freshman year, but I still wasn't confident enough. And I think that was the gymnast in me, like wanting to perfect my dives. And so during the recruiting process, I asked Bob, I was like, hey, like, I have these dives, but I would love to, figure out a way where I can feel confident and compete them the way I know I can.
Mhm.
And so we both discussed that redshirting for me would be the best option. And so learning that it's just trusting the process. Like I didn't get to compete right away, but I also got to learn a lot of other things during that.
Yeah, you got to learn so much. And I love that you touch on the recruiting process. You're from California, you picked Houston. What was it about the University of Houston and specifically this diving program that you felt was such a good fit for you?
Um, Honestly, the recruiting calls with Bob were so funny because he would call at the most like inconvenient times for me. So like he was a coach to remember. Like I was I would tell him a certain amount of like time I was available and he'd call me at like the worst possible time. So I like remembered him and he was always doing something. Like there was one time he was barbecuing chicken in his backyard. And I was like, that's to me, like from California, I'm like, is that really Texas? Like that seems very Texas to me. And so, just doing your research. I mean, that's like the best advice I can do or anyone can do while recruiting is research the coach, the program. And my mom and I would go through with the coaches and he has had such a great history of developing divers. So whether you have come from a diving background or a gymnastics background, he has shown and proven that he can get those types of athletes to a Division 1 level or even an Olympic level. So I know he coached Cassidy Cook, and I mean, that's really impressive to hear that, this coach was at a club and then, he coached Cassidy Cook from a young age. And it's just, you look at that and you say, okay, is that something that is interested in or something you want to be a part of? And so the Houston program to me was more developmental, and that's what I definitely needed.
For sure. And speaking of Cassidy, crushing it in Paris with Sarah Bates,
Yeah,
so fun to watch.
yes. It was so fun to watch. And I downloaded, I had to buy Peacock because I wanted to like rewatch it without the ads and everything. And it was, I mean, they did so good. They did really well.
They really did. They came out there, they competed, and they crushed it. And I think you really can't ask for more, right? You could just tell they were on their game the whole
Well,
time.
I feel like even at trials, they had, I mean, all the competitors did really well, but watching the trials this year, seeing how Cassidy and Sarah like came in, it just was a different vibe to me. Like at least like watching it, it was like they were not here to play. And they definitely like showed up and did their job.
For sure. Yeah, it's been really fun to watch the Olympics. And we'll talk about that too a little bit later, dive deeper into that. But Alexa, just kind of going back to the adversity you faced, and then you come out the next year, your teammates pick you as the most improved diver. I know you put in a lot of work to get that. What did that mean to you?
Oh, it was incredible. It to me, I was a walk on my freshman year. So by the time my recruiting process happened, didn't really have money for me. And so choosing Houston, I knew I was coming on as a walk on. I had to, I had a chip on my shoulder that I needed to prove to the team, to the coaches that I was there to perform my very best. And so I really like sophomore year was like it was my debut. It was my first time competing at this level and working hard and taking the time to talk to Bob and my teammates too about okay, this is what's happening, and mentally I'm not there, but physically I'm there, and it's just the small details. And to me it was so worth it. Like a lot of tears, but it was good.
Yeah, a lot of change too. This past year, a new conference,
Mhm.
make zones into events. How were you able to accomplish all that with so much that was going on?
Oh my gosh, making zones was like, to me it was a dream come true. It was I for platform, it was I got the minimum points. I got 225 on the dot. So to me, I didn't even know it, but my teammates knew it. So when they came and started, celebrating with me, I was like, I did that. Like, that was my first time accomplishing something I've never done before at that level. So it was a lot of grit, and I just enjoyed the moment and enjoyed getting there because you just seeing it through videos to me, like, my mom would record or Bob would record, and you just seeing the progress each year is just amazing.
Oh, for sure. And I'm sure it just sparks goals this season. What
Yeah.
are your goals?
Oh, uh, honestly, I think again, perfecting more of my dives. There's some dives that I'm not still consistent with, so doing those more often. And then honestly, tower, I feel like I can eventually get a higher DD. So I competed at conference, probably one of the best dives I will ever compete. No, it was zones actually. I'm sorry. It was zones. And I competed a 107B. That was probably one of my best dives ever my entire career. And so I'm just ready to like work on that and then hopefully try and figure out more of a 10-meter list.
I love that. Those are great goals.
Yeah.
Those are really, really good goals. Alexa, I want to talk about Sports Illustrated Swimsuit. You're just glowing when I
I'm like, it's
mention that.
so cool to hear that. Yeah. It was a surreal moment. It was insane. I don't even know how to like say it in words sometimes.
Well, I guess we could start off with this. Had you ever been to Belize?
No.
No.
No,
What was
no.
that like?
Oh my gosh. Well, I'll tell you how I found out because it was such a funny. I like was at practice, and my head coach, Coach Tanika, she comes over to Bob and they're talking. And I'm on my last dive. I'm like, okay, he's not watching. Like, it's okay. Like, it's the last dive. And he calls me over with this like stern voice, like I got in trouble or something. And I'm like, it was like one last dive. Like, I don't know what you want from me. And he goes, do you have a passport? And I go, yeah. And he goes, okay, get it. You're going to Belize. And I was like, what? He's a, you leave in 2 weeks for Belize. That's how he told me. And so I was like, oh my gosh. Like, and he's like, do you even know where it is? I'm like, nope.
Let me look on a map real quick.
Yeah, let me, yeah. Like he pulled it up on his phone and I was like, wow. And like the pictures doesn't do it justice. Like it is truly, it's so beautiful there. And the temperature was perfect. It was everything.
From arriving there to your shoot, I mean, can you kind of take us through the day or the trip? I mean, I don't even know where to begin with this.
Well, I've never, okay, so we got like a whole itinerary like a week before. So that's all I was looking at. Like in class, that's what I was looking at. My mind was elsewhere at that point, but I remember them saying there's like a car that was going to pick me up, and I've never had that happen. So I was like, wow, this is special. This is crazy. Like I was like, okay, so the car picks me up, and thank goodness, because the other athletes, I had a softball player and then a basketball player. And I was meeting the basketball player, her name is Jillian, at the airport in Bush and Houston. So I got to see her and meet her. So we flew to Belize together. So that was very comforting because we're leaving the country. So it's like, we have to go through the paperwork and a different airport. We had to go through two different airports. So that was a little bit stressful, not knowing exactly what was going to come. But having her was like comforting because I was like, okay, we're in it together. So immediately after we land in Belize, we we go on this little small plane, maybe that fit like 12 people. And you can see the pilot, you can see all his little buttons and everything. It was like I was shaking. I was like, that's a lot. But right when we got to the hotel, we had fittings and they gave us all these options for bathing suits and we got to try them on and they took our photo and it was just so cool to see the whole process behind the photos. I mean, like you're living in these are people's jobs and it's just a different perspective to see, and I never got that, and so being a part of that was a very cool experience.
And you mentioned Jasmine Williams and Jillian Hayes. I mean, just
Mhm.
looking at the photo of the three of you, it kind of gives me chills. There's so much power in one picture. What was it like to stand alongside fellow Big 12 student athletes and just be a part of this together?
It was, I mean, it was like a power force. Like that photo in the magazine, I feel like it screams like women empowerment in sports. Like we are representing the Big 12 and any other student athlete out there. So, what I loved is that we were in different sports and it shows our bodies are so different, yet we're both all muscular. So Jasmine is a softball player. So she's gonna have a softball body representing softball. And it was just, she's taller, obviously, but she's not as tall as Jillian's muscular, body. And it was cool to see different sides of sports and their bodies. And you can still feel beautiful while still feeling muscular.
Yeah, and one thing that was beautiful was your photo and your photos because there are so many, and it's so
I
funny.
know.
I was looking at the toe point, the abs, just the positioning, and I'm like, Alexa the diver, and it's just so beautiful.
I know. MJ kept saying pretty feet to Jasmine and to Jillian, and it's funny because it's like to me it's so natural, but they don't need a toe point. Like they don't need that in their sports, and for me it's just like I I need like that's just what I do.
It's just natural. When you
Yeah,
in the sand, you point your toes, your abs are flexed a certain way. It's just how us divers do things, right?
yeah. Like if you don't do a toe point, you're getting deducted.
How many photos do you have printed and where are they?
I saw this thing where it's like you put the bathing suit. So I got to keep one of the bathing suits,
Hmm.
like the purple plum one was one of my favorites, and I want to hang it on like a glass case kind of, where
I
it's
like
like
a
the photo,
privacy space.
yeah, like a photo and a bathing suit. And so I'm just kind of waiting for the right moment to do that when I'm not busy.
Alexa, your Sports Illustrated swimsuit debut came at a very special time in the 60th anniversary issue. How much did
Yeah,
that mean to you?
that was crazy. To me, it was like they're celebrating all the legends and all everything with it. It was incredible. And so with that, I got to meet some people that I would have never met. Like, I mean, being in the magazine is one thing, but like getting to meet the people who have made history in the magazines was just amazing.
Tell us about some of the other women that you met, some that jump out to you. I know all of them are absolutely incredible, and it's hard to probably pick and choose one or two, but while you were there, was there any like, you know, crazy moment that you had?
Ooh, I was definitely starstruck by Kate Upton. I mean, she's glowing. Like I just saw her across the room and I was like shaking. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm in the same room. I'm breathing the same air as Kate Upton. She was so nice and so down to earth. All these women, I think what surprised me is when you think of all these like celebrities and all this like the models and everything, you think I don't know, to me I was just surprised they were just very down to earth and actually like welcomed me and cared for me, and they were so proud of all three of us. Like it was a totally different world, and unfortunately Jasmine wasn't allowed or wasn't able to come to the launch in Florida because she was in the tournament for NCs. So it was unfortunate that she wasn't able to come, but for Jillian and I, we felt very welcomed. And it was just by all these beautiful women. So it was just speechless.
Do you have a funny or interesting story about the shoot or about the day? You're a very fun and, happy and excited person. How did you get kind of relaxed and in the zone for this photo shoot?
I was nervous and I was shaking, and I've never had this like, I mean, I get the nerves before competing, but like this was a new feeling of just like modeling and nothing I've ever experienced. So I told Derek, the photographer, and MJ, I was like, okay, I've never done this before. I'm really nervous. And MJ was like, you're fine. Like you can do this. Think of this as a correction. And when we correct you, it's like a coach correcting you. And so when they said that, I was like, okay, they're correcting my body. Divers, we get that correction all the time. Coaches tell us to do a certain movement with our body. So that's how I focused and like was able to calm myself down. I kind of put myself in a competing mode, honestly. And so I just called Derek, Coach Derek, just to like be like, okay, he's my coach. Like this is nothing but a coach and athlete moment.
I love that. And you're such
Yeah.
a natural, just being an athlete, being coach, especially with diving, right? They pick you apart. It's so subjective, every little detail,
So
right?
your stomach, you needs to be this way and you need a hollow in. It's like, okay, if I can do that, I can figure out how to pose.
For sure. And I love how you draw the similarities with competing, almost the routine, how you went about the day, how you channeled those nerves. I mean, you can't tell by the photos that you were nervous.
Thank you. I was like, deep breaths, deep breaths.
I mean, this is something that would have never happened a few years ago. How has the NIL era opened up such incredible opportunities for student athletes across the board?
I think NIL has done some amazing things to the collegiate world. I mean, it's giving opportunities that some athletes would never have. So, it started off with like, football, like the bigger sports, I would say always had some type of NIL deals, but allowing the smaller sports like swimming and diving and, even track and field, it's not small as swim and dive, but, they're not as small as swim and dive. it's just giving a lot of opportunities that you would never expect, and experiencing brand dealerships like you would never expect, and having that that networking go and just meeting new people and stuff.
For sure. Has this inspired you to do some more modeling in the future?
As yes, I am building like my portfolio right now, and I am talking to to some agencies. So it's kind of a path that I'm willing to try, because I feel like it's something that maybe I could do well. But I also definitely want a corporate job.
Yes, yeah, do it. You have a good balance.
Yeah, yeah.
That's amazing. Alexa, how awesome and what a fun opportunity. And you shined very bright.
Thank you.
Alexa, we got to talk about the Olympic Games. I don't know about you. I've been kind of glued to my TV, and if I'm not near a TV, I'm on the Peacock app, just
Yeah.
watching everything. I mean, obviously the diving, but I love all the other sports too. What have been your takeaways from the diving? I know we talked a little bit about Cassidy Cook and the connection that your diving coach in college at Houston that Bob has to Cassidy. But any other takeaways on some of the diving events in particular?
It's always fun to watch the Chinese compete. To me, they've dominated the sport for so long. And watching, I mean, Bob is a very big advocate on watching the Chinese divers and the small little details. And so watching being on Peacock and being able to like rewatch certain movements for, certain dives and takeoffs has been, I mean, it's like that's who you watch to like you if you want to be better, and it's like, incredible to watch what they can do versus what the USA can do versus Canada, just I mean, it's comparing different types of athletes, but in such a good way.
People ask me all the time, what makes them so good? I'm like, well, where do I start? I mean, there's just the training, the fundamentals, just everything, live, breathe, sleep, diving. And I remember when I was diving for Hong Ping at USC, he told us, he said, you guys picked diving. They picked me to be a diver. So they have
Yeah.
that whole selection process where they see young children and, maybe there's certain elements that make them stand out at a young age. And it's like, this child is going to be a really good diver. And he was an Olympian, so it worked out, right?
Well, I was rewatching Synchro Women's Tower, and I don't know which one, but it was one of the Chinese divers, and they said she was originally a gymnast, and then she was playing hopscotch, and she was bounced like she was just going higher than her body height, so they put her in diving, and I was like, I mean, as a coach, just to see that, that's like absolutely insane, that they can just see certain movements and they're like, she's in the wrong sport. She needs to be put into diving, and now she's an Olympian and a gold medalist. Like they just have like I to me, the Chinese I feel like have just a totally different system that we just can't grasp yet. And it's very cool to see, but it's also like we gotta figure something out.
Yeah, it was almost one of the reasons I picked USC. I'm like, I admire Hung Ping so much and his long list of incredible divers. It's like you just want to be a part of it, right? One step closer.
And but I mean, he dove for China, so he also has that mentality and kind of reinforces it in his program, which I loved because as a gymnast, I had Chinese coaches,
Mhm.
so they reinforced that there. So you just trust the process.
What is the diving event that you're most excited to see out of all of them? Like, which one is your favorite?
Oh, I would say Tower. I would say I'm excited to watch Tower because we got two spots. That was nerve-wracking at trials, seeing that. So I think because personally I like Tower. So I think watching Tower for me, I'm like, okay, like I love Tower, but Springboard for me, I just get more nerve-wracking because I mean it's hurdles that just get me sometimes.
Yeah. And how about Brandon LaSchiavo getting
Second,
the
yeah,
nod during the games? It's like, oh, now Brandon's going. Yes,
yeah. When I saw that, I was like, wow, like, okay, yes, like, okay, like we're getting another spot. It's really great. And he's from Huntington, or he's from, I think, Huntington Beach too. So, he's representing, California as well as USA, but also he went to Mission Viejo too. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, we crossed paths when I was at SC, so
Okay.
it was fun to dive with him for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's so cool to see people from your hometowns being in the Olympics. Like it's like, okay, like you got this.